keep our head down. The problem with all of this is people stop to put their head down. Everything else, every job is just boring. And with all the hype, people are like, no, let's not do this, and then try something else. But in the end, most successful people have done very boring things in life. Most successful developers as well. So just find pleasure in these boring things, and you'll be fine. The problem comes when there's a lot of hype, and it's hard to tell. People just can't focus. Okay, this is happening, then that is happening, and this is happening. So try to focus. There's one thing you take away from this 4-minute rant is try it for 3 months, and then coding doesn't take more than 3 months to not master, but you know it enough to build most things. So give it 3 months, and then after 3 months, what's the worst thing that happens? Your 3 months went away, it's fine. What were you doing anyway? Scrolling on Instagram, right? So might be something better here. All right, with that small 5-minute rant, we will get into part 2 of authentication. We did authentication yesterday, and I would say if you were not in yesterday's class and you do not know authentication, generally JWTs, then you should probably drop off. Yesterday's class is already uploaded on harkirath.classics.co.in. It is not uploaded yet on app.100xsteps.com. It was a longer class. Our transcoder broke. It was a 3-hour class. So you can find it here and go through it. If you did not go through yesterday's class, today's class will be a little, most things will go above your head. Yesterday we covered from here to sort of here. We were able to do JWTs. Today we'll understand a little bit more about JWTs, how they feel they can be insecure, but they're not insecure. Then we'll understand a very basic assignment, which hopefully you guys do. Then we'll connect a front end and a back end. This will probably be the most actionable thing today. We have written backends independently. We have written front ends independently. We in the middle tried to sync them together using Axios, if you remember. But today we'll actually do an end-to-end thing. We have a backend, we have a front end. How do we make the front end talk to the backend and have a full stack application? And lastly, I have another assignment, which if you understand everything until this point, then this is where you start to do things on your own. By the end of today, if you know CSS well, and if you understood DOM manipulation well, and now that you understand authentication, you can start to build a lot of use cases. A to-do application, even though it's an ugly to-do application that you will make. By ugly, I mean the tech stack is ugly. You will be writing it in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and not in React. But you can build it. Most use cases that you can think of, Notion, for example, you can build something like Notion, the front end and the back end, after everything that we've done in today's class, because you understand authentication, which is one primary bit of building a full stack application. Cool. Let's get right into it. Let me give a very brief of what we did yesterday. Let me take you through yesterday's code before we dive into the main logic of this. Is probably where we will start today's class. And as I said, if it feels overwhelming, probably need to go through yesterday's class. Alrighty, we will kick things off with the iPad. Yesterday, we discussed something called authentication. 70% yesterday did not know what authentication was. So I'm assuming it's a new sort of concept. Auth in Node.js. Authentication generally is a more abstract concept. Basically means when you go to a website and you see 2 input boxes and a button, you click on this button, you try to sign in. You put your phone number over here, you put your password over here, you click on this button. What happens under the hood? What request goes out to a backend server? What does the backend server respond back with? And after this, how can you access all of your data? If this is facebook.com, then after I log in, how do I see my posts over here? What requests do I send to the backend? What do I send along with the request? That the backend knows, okay, this is indeed Harkirath, and the backend responds back with my set of posts and not someone else's posts. This you've seen in most websites. This is how most websites are built. If you go to app.100xsteps.com, if you are logged in, if you have gone through the sign-in page, what happens? You see the set of courses that you have access to. app.100xsteps.com. Everyone will see a different thing here based on what courses they have bought. So the request that is going to the backend is aware the person who is logged in this browser is Harkirath. And then the backend somehow figures out okay, what all courses Harkirat has purchased and returns them over here. When you build your to-do application, you will create something similar. Firstly, people will be expected to go to a sign-in page. I repeat, firstly, in your to-do website, people will be expected to go to a sign-in page like this. They will sign in. And once they do, they will see their own set of to-dos. They can add to-dos here, remove to-dos here, and finally log out. When they log out, they can't see their to-dos anymore. That is how any full stack application is built. And we learned yesterday that one way to do authentication, I repeat, one way to do authentication is by using a token based approach. I repeat, the thing that we learned yesterday was a token based approach where we said, okay, if this is the front end of the website, or this is the browser code and this is the backend. When the user is on the sign up page, initially when the user comes, they will be on the sign up page. And when they sign up, they will send a request to the backend with their username and their password. The backend will respond back with successful, you have logged in. In the real world, usually this username is an email and there is a full OTP flow that happens. You send out an OTP to the user puts an OTP, finally logs in. So, signing up is a complicated process. If you actually validate the user's username, validate the user's phone number, we are not doing it. We are just assuming the username that is coming, the email that is coming is the user owns that email. That is the sign up endpoint. Then there is the sign in page. On the sign in page, when the user sends a request to the backend, again they give their username and their password. And we discussed yesterday that this time, after the backend validates that the username and the password is correct, the backend responds back with a token. What is a token, Harkirat? Just a very long string that's very hard to read, very hard to create yourself. You cannot guess it. It's like an encrypted or a hash string. A very long string that you get back that the person stores in the browser. I repeat, when you sign in, the backend returns you something that you store in the browser so that in every future request that you are sending, let's say this is a to-do application, finally you are on the to-dos page that shows you all of your to-dos. In all of these subsequent requests now, you send across your token. The token that you got back during sign-in, that token gets sent along with the other things in this endpoint. For example, if this is the /todos endpoint that gives you back your to-dos, here we will, not send anything extra, just an endpoint that gives you all your to-dos. But the token is one extra thing we will send. If I want to create a to-do, then what will be the request? If I want to create a to-do, then I will say, yeah, this is the description of my to-do. The description is go to gym or something like that. But in this request also, I will be sending the token along. Every request that I send to the backend, I send this token along with it. This is what we discussed yesterday. This is what we coded yesterday as well. So let me first show you this approach on this website, and then let me take you through the code that we wrote yesterday. How did we create tokens? How did we use the tokens? So this is the website. As I said, after you sign in, which I have, every request that is going out sends some extra token somewhere in the request. And this token is usually sent in the request headers. 99.9% you will be sending this in the request headers on app.100xsteps.com. You can also try logging in. And once you log in, you will see there is a parameter called cookie, where somewhere here that token is present that the server gave me when I logged in. So practically you can see, this happens in almost all websites which have an authentication flow. Every website that has authentication built in, you sign in, you get a token. In every subsequent request, you send back the token. How does that happen? How is this website sending token back in every request? Is a different question we will try to tackle today. But hopefully we understand a very basic version of authentication. How did we implement this yesterday? Let's try to look at the code that we wrote yesterday. I have the code from yesterday in the first slide over here. Let me also paste the slides for the people who don't have it. These are the slides for today. And if you go to the very first slide, you will find the code that we wrote yesterday. Let me take you through the index.js file that we wrote. So nothing too complicated, a simple index.js file where if you look at it, we use the express library and we use another library called JSON web token. This is an external library that we are using. If you go to yesterday's video, you will see we were not using this initially. Initially, we had our own approach to create a token. Eventually, we created a JSON web token, or we used this library called JSON web token to create the tokens, to issue these tokens. The orange token that I was talking about that the backend sends, we use this library to create it. Whenever you create a JSON web token, whenever you create a JWT, you need a password associated with it. JWT creation is very similar to encryption. I repeat, creating a JSON web token. When the user came on your website, oh boy. When the user came on your website, this is the backend, this is the front end. And when the user sent the sign in request, the token that you generated on the backend and then returned back to the user can be created in various ways. The way that we are using right now is by using JWTs. What is JWT, Harkirat? It is very similar to encryption. What is encryption, Harkirat? We are given a string, let's say, Harkirat. What does encryption do? It takes a key and it encrypts this into some random gibberish that you cannot understand. And you can always decrypt it back using this key. You get back Harkirat. This is what encryption is. This process is called encryption. This process, as you can guess, is called decryption. JWTs are very similar, where you don't encrypt and decrypt, you what is called encode and decode strings. So given a string like Harkirat and given a password, a secret, a token, you can convert this into some very long random string, very long, 1, 2, 3, A, Z, you get the idea, very unrecognizable string, from which you can do two things. Given this string, you can decode the original payload back. You can decode the original payload without the secret. This part is important. Anyone who has this token can decode this token, get the original payload without the secret, but you can only verify the token with the secret. So it is not similar to encryption. In case of encryption, no one can get back the original string. I repeat, in case of encryption, if you want to get back the original string, you need this key over here. Whoever encrypted had a key, they need to have the same key to decrypt. JWTs are different. You don't encrypt, you encode the string, you convert the original string over to some format, and anyone can convert it back to this. So, this conversion, the decoding can be done by anyone, this section right here. But verification, what does verification mean? How is it different from decoding? Verification basically means checking, was I the person who created this? I repeat, this section right here, verification is, this thing, I can decode without the secret, but I can verify कि ये मैंने ही बनाई थी क्या? Was I the one who created it using this secret? So the purpose of this secret in this JWT is not to be, if you don't have the secret, you cannot decode. No, you can still decode the string, the original payload, the original string. But it gives you one extra thing. If you want to verify कि ये JWT तुमने ही बनाया था, if you want to verify that you are the one who created this JWT, then use this secret and we will let you verify also. We will give you a function that you can use to verify that this JWT was indeed created using this secret right here. That is another thing that JWTs provide, which is why JWTs get confusing, because people are like, yeah, anyone can decode it. This is a security vulnerability. Yeah, this token that you sent, the original payload of that can be decoded by anyone. But the answer is that is fine. And the parallel in the real world that I want to show is, something like signing a check. Here is a small comparison to this whole flow to a check. Okay, if you ever sign a check, you can show it to everyone and everyone can see that you are transferring $20 to a friend. If I've signed a check in India and India, there is a piece of paper that you can sign, and if you give it to the bank will debit $20 or 20 rupees from your bank account. But I can show it to 100 people. They can do nothing with this information. They can be like, "Haan, theek hai, you signed a check to send $20 to your friend." They can't debit the $20 from your friend, right? So even if they can decode कि अच्छा हाँ this check is doing something, they cannot do the actual debit. For that you have to go to the bank, and the bank will verify was this checkbook issued by me? Was I the person that gave you this checkbook? And similarly in JWTs, these tokens, they can be decoded by anyone, but only the person who encoded it, they had a secret, only they can verify कि हाँ this was indeed created by me, ये मैंने ही बनाई थी, तो ठीक है, this is the token that I issued. Do we understand this much in authentication? A lot of this is from yesterday. Context is clear. Can we start to code? All right. 90% is great. 91% is even better. So let's proceed. If you guys understand this much, and let's try to code everything from scratch again. So we already coded this whole thing. I can copy paste the whole thing as well, but it shouldn't take us more than 5 minutes to code it. So let's code the whole thing. It will also give you some practice. Try to code without an AI. And then we will do the assignment for today, which is the first assignment for today, which is this, creating an auth middleware. So the steps, this is the code that you have to write. You can write it however you want. You can copy it from here. You can write it yourself. Take 5 minutes and try to write the basic backend that has 3 endpoints: a sign up endpoint that pushes to an in-memory array, a sign in endpoint that also checks from this in-memory array whether or not this user exists, and then a /me endpoint that gets the JWT from the header, decodes the JWT, and then this one is not needed, verifies the JWT, and then checks if this user exists. If it does, returns the information back to the user. Let me quickly code it on my side as well. I will explain everything that I'm doing as I do it. So step 1, and if you want, you can just copy it if you think you will not be able to write the whole thing in 5 minutes. Step 1 is creating a fresh folder. So I'm going to write mkdir week 6 class 2. I'm going to go into this folder, week 6 class 2. I'm going to run npm init -y. This will initialize an empty package.json. I'm going to open this in Visual Studio Code. File, open. And I'm going to add a index.js file here. This to everyone has to do, even you have to do. Now you can copy over index.js from yesterday if you want, from this assignment, or you can code the whole thing yourself. Either is fine. I'm going to just code the whole thing and explain everything that is happening. So it gives you a recap of what we did yesterday. Step 1 for both of us, even if you're copying code, is going to be install the dependencies. So npm install express and JSON web token. These are the 2 dependencies that we are using, right? If you go back here, you will see some code we are using by other libraries. So we have to bring those libraries to our code base. That includes express and JSON web token. Then I have to just import these at the top. Then what do I have to do in case I'm creating an Express application? I initialize an instance of this Express application, const app equal to Express. Then what do I have to do? I have to introduce 3 endpoints, one for signing up, one for signing in, and one for getting back my information. Now I have a typo here. Something like this. I have 3 endpoints that I have created that, the user will send us requests to. The last endpoint actually needs to be a get endpoint. For this, go to yesterday's class, you'll get the context of what this does. What happens in the sign up endpoint? We get the username and the password, rec.body.username. And then we get the password. And what do we do with it? We push it to a global array. We created a global array called users, and we started to push all the signed up users over here. So users.push username and password. If you want, you can write the full hand over here, username : username. Or if you know the key and the value have the same name, you can also write the shorthand, which looks something like this. Either is fine. If this feels complicated, then this much hopefully is clear to understand what's happening here. And then you finally return back to the user. You are signed in. A lot of people told a flaw in this approach yesterday, which is, okay, we are allowing multiple people with the same username right now. This will create a lot of problems. So ideally, we should check if a user with this username already exists. We are not doing that, but we should do that. And also ideally, I shouldn't be pushing this to an in-memory array. I should be storing this data in a database. I am not doing that right now because we haven't learned databases yet. That is hopefully all you need for the very first endpoint. Try to breathe the 10 lines of code here. Hopefully it's straightforward. Get the body, username and password, push to the global users array, return to the user that you are signed in. One more thing, if you are using rec.body, what do you have to do? You have to use the express.json middleware, because this middleware is what will let you extract JSON body from the request. Hopefully that is also clear. First endpoint is done. Now come the tough endpoints. The first one that needs to generate the JWT. The second one that needs to verify the JWT. So if you want to use a JWT, what was the first thing? First thing was you have to create a secret. Let me call it Harkirat123, whatever the secret might be. It's like a password. And when the user signs in, what do I have to do? I have to first get the username and the password. I've already written that here. So let me just copy it from here to here. Extract the username and the password. What is the next thing we have to do? We have to check, is this password correct? Is there a user that exists in the global users array that indeed has this username and password? So we write the code to check, is there a user that exists in the global users array? Let me write the slightly easier to digest syntax, even though the one that I was writing, the users.find syntax, is slightly more elegant. But let me for now write some ugly logic. Okay, let found user equal to null. And then I iterate over all the users. Let I equal to 0, I less than users.length. If users of I dot username equal to the username that the user has sent, and users of I dot password equal to the password that the user has sent, then what can we say? We can say, okay, this user has been found. Okay, found user is users of I. We have found a user who had signed up in the past, and we put their value in this found user variable. This variable now holds the user which has this username and this password. If the user doesn't exist, then what should we do? We should simply return over there, and we should send back, or found user doesn't exist. We should simply return over there, okay, sorry, your credentials are incorrect. And if the user does exist, then what can we say? We need to return the user back the token. What do we need to do if the user signs in? We send them back their token, right? The orange thing that I created. So how can I create a token? As I said, we are using the JWT library to create the token. So what am I going to write here? I'm going to write JWT const token equal to jwt dot sign, jwt dot sign. What data do I need to put in this token? If you remember, I said whenever you create a JWT, you are signing some data. There is some data that gets converted into some other format, which can be decoded by anyone, verified by just you. So the first argument here is, what is that data? And in our case, that data is just the username, just the username of the user. We do not encode their password. This token is good enough. If we send them back this token with their username, whenever they send us requests in the future, we know कि अच्छा ये तो ये बंदा है. We can extract their username back from the token. So the token is generated with this as the payload and JWT underscore secret as, you know, the password that is used to sign it. And what do? We return this back to the user. Yeah, this is your token. That is all that you have to do in the sign in endpoint. Hopefully that is simple to digest as well. We have done already yesterday. If you don't understand, you should go to yesterday's class. I've written it again once, you know. Okay, this is the username and the password. We'll test this very soon as well, and that will take you through all of these edge cases. Okay, when does credentials incorrect get returned? When does token get returned? So on and so forth. Sign up and sign in are done. The last endpoint is the /me endpoint. Let me not go here. Let me quickly show you. Okay, you know, the sign up and sign in endpoints are sort of working as expected. Let me add a app.listen 3000 at the end so that it starts to listen on a specific port. And now let me try to hit the sign up endpoint and the sign in endpoint. If I go to Postman, and God, Postman isn't working for me. Quit. One second. How can I post 4-star? Oh, there you go. Nope. Oh, there you go. Cool. Sorry about that. Let me send a request to the sign up endpoint, which is a post request. Go to the body. This is the username. This is the password. If I click on send, it says you are signed in. What does it say? It says you are signed in. What does that mean? That means, okay, the control reached here, username and passwords were extracted, users was pushed to this global array, and then finally we got back this you are signed in. Now let me hit the /sign in endpoint. And what does it return? It returns me the token if I'm sending the right username and password. If I send the wrong username and password, it says credentials are incorrect. Notice this token now. This token is a JWT. And as I said, anyone can decode it even without the password at the top. This password is used to verify it, but anyone can decode it. If I go to the website jwt.io and paste this specific token, you will see it says username Raman. The thing, it has something extra, ignore for now, but the thing at the top, username Raman, the thing that I had encoded in the JWT. Where did I encode it? In the /sign in endpoint. The thing that I had encoded in the JWT can be decoded by anyone in the world, and that is fine. It is not a problem. It can only be verified by me. So now I expect कि यार जब भी a request comes to the /me endpoint. What is the /me endpoint? That gives the user some of their own information. This can be similar to a /courses endpoint that, you know, gives you all of your courses if you have bought a course. /todos endpoint that gives you all of your to-dos. Similarly, we have a very simple endpoint /me where what do you have to do? First, you get the token from the headers. I repeat, this part is important. Anyone who wants to hit an authenticated endpoint. What is an authenticated endpoint? Where you need to have a token. You need to be signed in, only then can you access it. They need to send a token to us in the header. I showed you this a while back on app.100xsteps.com where the header over there was the cookie. And over here, the header that our website supports is called a token. And then we have to verify this token. Const decoded data equal to jwt dot verify the token using the secret that I had. I am verifying the token. What am I not doing? I am not decoding it. If I write jwt.decode, it will give me something similar. But this is a security vulnerability. Okay, yaar, you are just decoding the token. You are not verifying. Okay, you were the one who issued this token. There might be some random person out in the world who can also sign the same thing, right? They can also sign username Raman using their own JWT secret. So if you use decode over here, उनका token भी valid हो जाएगा. Their token will also become valid because they are also signing the same payload. You are also signing the same payload. What is different is your password over here. So this is the thing that you have to keep very secure. And whenever you get back a JWT from the end user, you should verify it and not decode it. Both of them will give you the same response. But I hope you understand why this is a security vulnerability. And if you do this versus doing this, then anyone can log in to your website as any other person. You can log in as Harkirat to app.100xsteps.com if you were decoding the JWT and not verifying it. All right. If decoded data dot username exists, means the user was indeed logged in. So you can return them whatever information they seek. Let's say they just want back their user. वैसे तो a better use case is that they want back their username as well as their password. So what we are going to do is logic that looks very similar to this. Let found user equal to null. Then we'll iterate through all the users to find the user who has this username. I repeat, the token that the user sent me, user ने मुझे token भेजा, I found their username from the token, and now I am iterating through the global users array, trying to find the user whose username is this. I'm trying to find the user whose username is this, so that I can return them back. Yaar, your username is found user.username and your password is found user.password. Think of this /me endpoint as, let's say a /reset-password endpoint, not reset password, more specifically, get password, an endpoint where if you send a request, it returns you back your password. This is a very weird use case. No one will ever return you your password. No website in the world, if you have a password over there, will tell you your password was this. But let's say our use case is this. So what do? We get the username, we iterate over all the users, we return them back their information, including their username and password. If this was a more elaborate website, it would have the first name, last name, profile picture, all of that you would return here to the user. Let's see if it works. And then, let's get to the assignments for today. If I run node-index.js, go to Postman, let me sign up again. Let me sign in. And once I sign in, I get back this token. What do I need to do with this token? Eventually, what does the browser need to do with this token? It needs to send it in every future request. It needs to send a token header, which looks like this, in every authenticated route. The /me endpoint is an authenticated route, which is why we have to send the token along with it. It says username is not defined. I have some bug in my code, which I'm sure some of you already saw. If users of i.username equal to decoded data.username. So this was the bug over here. Decoded data has the user's username. We decode it from the token. Which token? The token that I am sending over here. We verify the token, get back the decoded data, and find the user, return them back their username and password. Let me restart. I will again have to sign up first. Then I will sign in. Got back a token. Use this token to hit the /me endpoint. It returns me back my username and password. Let's do a quick poll. Is this easy to understand? Digest? Are we good to go? Can we start the assignments for today? This was pretty much a recap for everything we did yesterday. So hopefully nothing too jarring or complicated. 92% is great. Let's move on to today's assignment. What we have done is great, but misses one small, practice hello. Create an auth middleware. Can you try creating a middleware called auth that verifies if the user is logged in and ends the request early if a user isn't logged in. If you understood everything until now, and if you have gone through the middleware class, I would hope this is very simple. So take 2 minutes and try to code it. Of course, there is a solution here, but would be nice if you code this yourself. Try to create a middleware. Try to recap what was a middleware. Try to code one yourself. I will look at Q&A until then, even though I'm sure this was easy, so nothing really to ask. But yeah, take 2 minutes. How to send JWT in response headers. Let's see. The way to send headers back is rest.header JWT, comma, whatever token you want to send. Let's say the token was. That is a good question. I have rarely sent back, data in the headers, but I think it is this. Res.header JWT token. So, whatever headers you want to send, you can send them like this, random Harkirat. And if I now restart the application, I go to Postman, I sign up, and then I sign in. If you look at the response headers, you see random Harkirat in the response headers. You see JWT, this token in the response headers. So if you want to send the token in the response headers, you can send it like this. What did I do? These 2 lines of code. Good question. Why do we not use password as JWT secret for token? Why do we not use password as JWT secret for token? I'm assuming you're saying, why do we not use JWT? Yeah, sorry, I don't understand the question. So please repeat the /me endpoint. Let me do that in just a second. Someone else also said to recap the /me endpoint. Let me do that. 2 people asked. So the /me endpoint is similar to a slash. Eventually you will create a to-do application. There will be a to-dos /to-dos endpoint that people will hit to get back the list of to-dos that they have on the website. Similarly, the /me endpoint is an endpoint that our users hit to get back their password, their username and their password. So this /me endpoint's goal is someone authenticated, someone who has already signed in will be sending a request to the server. The server needs to respond back with the user's password and their username. So what did the user send us? They just sent us a token. I did not do a const username equal to rec.body.token here, right? I did not do this. User just sent me a token. I decoded that token by using jwt.verify. What does this function do? It verifies कि ये जो token आया है, the token that has just come, is it the same that I have signed? Was I the person who signed this token a few days ago, a few weeks ago, a few hours ago? Is this token created by me? That is what jwt.verify does. This function will check is this token indeed correct and extract its data. What was the data we signed? This is what we signed. So we get that in the decoded data variable. And then, if decoded data.username is correct, then we return the user back there, username and password. This code over here is just iterating through all the users and trying to find the specific user who has this username. Cool. Great. The problem now is, you will have multiple endpoints, as I said. Right now we have a sign in endpoint, a sign up endpoint, and a /me endpoint. You will have a app.get /todos endpoint in the to-dos endpoint in the future. Let's say you're creating a to-do application, and then you will have another endpoint to create a to-do. That will be an app.post. You will have another endpoint to delete a to-do, so on and so forth. You will have many endpoints to do various things. And the problem is you will be repeating the logic, specifically all of this logic, which is just 2 lines of code right now, but still, you will be repeating all of this logic. First decode the token, and if the token is not correct, there should be an else statement here. If it is not correct, then return the user back, something like message you are not logged in. You will be in all authenticated endpoints adding these 2 lines of code, adding this if statement to check, and adding this else statement that returns the user back their data. Only this much logic should reside inside the endpoint. The endpoint shouldn't worry about decoding the database, the decoding the token, or returning back something else. That should be all in a different function. We shouldn't be repeating ourselves. If I add a to-do endpoint in the future, I shouldn't be adding these 3 lines of code first over here, and then adding the else statement then over here, and adding all the logic to actually get the to-dos over here, which could be whatever users dot find the user, get their to-dos. So we should move all of this repeated logic into hopefully a middleware. A middleware probably seems like the best place for it. If you remember, when I was introducing middlewares, I also said the most important use case of middlewares is what? The most important use case of middlewares is authentication. Most of the times when you will be creating middlewares, you will be creating them for authentication. So let's create one. What is this middleware supposed to do? It is supposed to, what did the slide say? Can you create a middleware that verifies if the user is logged in and ends the request early if the user isn't logged in? So we need to end the request early. The me endpoint doesn't need to worry about any authentication logic. The me endpoint doesn't need to worry about any of this. It can be sure that if the control reaches here, agar yahan tak control aa gaya, then the user is indeed logged in. It can be sure of that. How? Because before this function runs, I am going to run a middleware. What was a middleware? The thing that runs first before the actual handler runs. And I'm adding or creating this auth middleware that I will be adding to all my authenticated routes. My life became so simple. I just had to, whatever route I know needs to be authenticated, I just add this middleware over here, or the name of the middleware over here. It will automatically check and end the request early if the user isn't logged in, if the user sent us the wrong token. But if the control does reach here, you can be sure that the user is indeed logged in. So let's create that middleware next. Let me create it right above this function. Let's call it auth res next. If you remember, a middleware takes 3 inputs: the request and response, which is the same as the final handler, and a function called next. Whenever you call this next function, control reaches the next handler in the middleware chain. So first the auth middleware will be called. If next is called over here, if next is called over here, then this function will get called. What does this guy need to do? Number 1, it needs to extract the token. Number 2, it needs to check, is this token correct or not? So const decoded data equal to rec whatever jwt dot verify token comma jwt secret. And then lastly, if decoded data dot username does exist, then it should call next, else it should end the request right here. You are not logged. Something like this. Now, all of these endpoints only worry about their own business logic. This guy worries about finding the user and returning their password back to the person who called the endpoint. This guy will only worry about getting their to-dos. They don't have to worry about what? They don't have to worry about the authentication logic that has been moved to a separate middleware. What does the middleware do? The same things we were doing here at the top, which is first getting the token from the header. You can add another check here. Okay, if not token, if the user hasn't sent us the token, then also you can return early if you want. Or, even if you don't do that, then this decoded verification, this will fail. And hence, the user will get back this. More specifically, this will throw an error. So something else would happen, but you get the idea. At least pseudocode structure we thoda understand. You should ideally wrap this inside a try-catch block, which we haven't. Don't worry about what that is. And this hopefully does what we expect. One thing is missing though. Can you guess what that one thing is? Can you guess why will this fail? What am I missing? There is one thing I'm missing. The verification happened over here. This guy got back the decoded username. It never sent it over to this function. इस function में कभी username आया ही नहीं. So there is no decoded data variable in this handler, right? This handler knows that the user is authenticated, doesn't know who is the user. So ideally, this middleware should pass the username to all the handlers that are using it. अगर यहाँ तक कंट्रोल आया ही है, if the control has reached over here, this guy should also know who is this person. Otherwise, how will it tell कि I need to get the to-dos of Harkirat or Raman or some other person? So one more thing our auth middleware needs to do is pass data to the next handler. It needs to transfer this username so that the other function gets this username and can use that username over here. If you remember the original definition of middleware, when we were reading middlewares, a few weeks ago or last week, I think, what did we say? Let me quickly show you. We said middlewares do three things: modifying the request or response object, ending the request response cycle, calling the next middleware function in the stack. We have done the last two. We end the request response cycle when, if the user isn't logged in, we call the next function in the stack if the user is logged in. We have not done first thing over here, modifying the request for the response object, request or the response object. I can modify something in the request object so that the next handler gets it. I can do something like this: rec.username equal to decoded data.username. That way, the request object that is present here is the same as the request object here. And यहाँ पे, rather than using decoded data.username, I can do rec.username. So this way, our middleware passed over data to the next function that needs it. It populated the request object. It changed the request object a bit so that the username, is available to you here. You can be sure कि अगर यहाँ तक control आ गया, if the endpoint does get called, then the user is logged in and this is the user's username. And then you can do whatever you want. This guy will return them their username and password. This guy will in the future return them their to-dos, post the to-dos, delete the to-dos, so on and so forth. So that is the thing that was expected, because generally you write these middlewares and this is what does authentication. Can I do all of this here, Harkirat? You can, but best practice is to have a separate auth middleware that does all of this logic. Do we understand this? Let me quickly show you this in action as well. Pretty much, does nothing. As you can see, I moved some logic over here. I passed some data from here to here, specifically the username that the user has. How did I do it? By modifying the request object. Let me quickly show you this in action. Meanwhile, can we do a small poll as well? Are we good to go? Sign up. It says you are signed in. Sign in. It lets me sign in. And the third one is the /me endpoint, where if I send, it returns me my username and password. Only 82% understood. Let's see what questions people have. Let me also from myself share a few things. Some people might be like, Harkirat, when you are calling next over here, how is the control reaching here? You should go back to the middleware class. In the middlewares class, we understood this. Whenever you create a middleware, the middleware first gets called, and if the next function is called, the next thing in the stack gets called. In Express, you can have a chain of middlewares. You can have app.get/me. First, this middleware should get called and do its thing, whatever it is doing in this case, and then the final handler should get called. Another small middleware that I can create is the logger middleware. Anytime a request comes, I want to log it to the screen so that we can eventually do analysis and see what all requests people are hitting the most. So here I can be like console.log request came to rec.method, or this request came, so that we can check how many get requests are coming, how many post requests are coming. And then next. Sorry, I might have confused a few people here. Something like this. What have I done over here? I created another middleware and I said anytime a request comes, कोई भी request आती है, I want to log कि कौन से method पे आई है, what method got called, post method, get method, and then I will just call the next thing. I don't want to stop the request. I don't want to manipulate the rec or the rest object. I just want to quickly log it so that in the future we can do analysis on our logs and call the next thing. And I can just put this in on of all of our endpoints. So, Even the sign up endpoint can use the logger middleware. Even the sign in endpoint can use the logger middleware. And even our, /me endpoint first uses the logger middleware. The logger middleware logs the request ka method, calls next. What gets called? Auth gets called next. The auth method does authentication verification, calls next, and then the final handler gets called. Control reaches here, you return the user back their information. So middlewares are just a chain of methods that you can put, not just one, you can put many. And each one of them does something. The logger middleware logs the request. The auth middleware checks if the user is logged in. And then the auth middleware does one extra thing. If the user is logged in, it will call the next endpoint, the next handler. It will also update the rec object to add the username field over there. That is why I can access rec.username over here. If I now run it and try to sign up, if I send a request to /signup, you will notice post request came gets logged. Why did it came? If you go to the sign up endpoint, the sign up endpoint is still the same, but I have added the logger middleware before the final handler. So control first reaches here. This gets logged. Then the next thing gets called, which is this guy right here. Some people might be asking her, can I not pass parameters here, username, and get it over here? The answer is no. You cannot, you are not calling this function. You are calling something else that is calling this function over here. So whatever you pass as an argument over here won't automatically come over here. The way to pass data from one middleware to the next handler is by using, the rec object and modifying the rec object over here. Cool. Hopefully that is more clearer. Let me look at Q&A for like a minute. Then we will proceed to writing the front end for it. What questions? Any questions? Specific questions? AK bhai, can you send the code? Which let me also post the code so you guys can run it locally. And slowly we will add on to this code, and you will add, the front end today as well. The goal is that aaj we do the front end as well. We have a full stack application running. We have created a backend, fairly decent backend, has middlewares and everything. Next, we'll create the front end for it. This is where you guys can find the code. Let me paste this in chat. Oh, that looks wrong. Sorry about that. This is the right one. You guys can find the code over here. Feel free to clone it. Feel free to look at it and, understand what is happening. This is going to be the starter point for what we are going to do next, which is going to be writing the front end for it. Cool. Can we get to writing the front end? You can take 3 minutes, small break. Let me answer a few questions in Q&A. Then let's do a poll. 9 p.m. we'll start to write the front end. Until then, let me look at, explain the rec.user thingy again. I will look at that Notion doc. I have seen your comment. Explain again. Why do we need rec.user in /me? Why do we need rec.user in /me? Sir, if you look at the /me endpoint, what is it doing? What is it supposed to do? Baaki sare chhod do. Just focus on the /me endpoint. It needs to get the current user, जिसने request भेजी है, it needs to get their password from the global users array. What is it doing? जो users array है, जहाँ पे someone had signed up in the past, you need to find their password. So if you look at the /me endpoint, यहाँ पे you need to know request किसने भेजी है. Who has sent you the request? जिसका password आपको ढूंढना है यहाँ पे. We are not doing token verification here anymore. यहाँ पे थोड़ी हम token को verify कर रहे हैं. I don't have this logic here anymore. I have it someplace else. ये logic I put in the auth middleware. So the auth middleware is what is verifying the user, decoding the user, getting back their username. So it is sort of its job ना कि भाई तूने ये चीज़ कर ही ली है. If you have already decoded the username, please put it in the request object so that I can use it over here. I can get the, oh, sorry about that. I can get the const current user equal to rec.username. and everywhere I can just use this current user. क्या इस यूजर का पासवर्ड क्या है बताओ. Let me find the user of the current password of the current user. Can I do this? You can also copy. If this feels overwhelming, you can do this. क्या यार ठीक है. Auth is just supposed to verify and call the next function. I will find the current user myself. Const current user equal to decoded data dot username. If you don't want to pass the data from the request object, you can recheck the token over here. That is fine. Request object तो same ही है ना. You can find the header here. You can also find the header over here. But this is repeated logic. You are redoing this verification in two places. जब यहाँ कर ही ली है, if you have already verified the token over here, why not just put it in the request object so that the next person doesn't have to do all of this. They can simply do const current user equal to rec dot username. Hopefully that is straightforward. Let's do another poll and then we will proceed. Do we now understand the logic to pass data from one middleware to the next and how we are using it in the authentication middleware over here? बड़ी नहीं ज़्यादा सुई. Okay. 84%. Let me open Q&A for 2-3 more minutes and then we will write the front end. How to use the rec object to pass data to the next function? Just add a new key on the rec object. The rec object looks something like this. Let's say, has some fields over here, status, headers, so on and so forth. Just put another key over here, username. Populate the request object with more keys, password, whatever you want to add, user, first name. You can populate various keys on the request object. Of course, don't override the headers or the status, these things. All of these you can just override. JWT में कोई भी encode करता, then how is it secure? Anyone can encode, you are right, using JWT, but I am encoding using my password. I am encoding the token using my password. Someone else will do it using their password. When I verify, I am verifying using my password. तो यार अब कोई और encode कर सकता है तो वो अपने password से करेगा ना यार. This will fail. This line of code will fail if I get a token that was not signed with this JWT. If it was signed with this secret, only then the verification will happen, which is why this line of code ensures that if someone else also signs the same payload, unless they signed it with the same password, I want to be same password se kar diya, then of course it will happen. But that is why this password needs to be very secure, right? You need to have this safe. It needs to be a very long random string so that other people can't guess it. I keep getting invalid token on Kirat's code. That is because you're not sending the token correctly. Make sure whenever you're sending the /me request in the headers, you have a key called token and you have the value over here, which is your actual token. How decode data parsing from auth to app.get? Oh. Okay, a few people are seeing this. How decoded data is being passed from authentication to this handler. Kirat, when you are calling next, you are not passing the username over here. How is the username coming over here? I am manipulating the rec and the res object. Jitne bhi ye call hote, right? All of these middlewares share the same request and response object. The logger middleware, the authentication middleware, it takes a request and a response as an input, and I can change the request object. कुछ extra add कर दूंगा मैं उसमें. Request object is just something like this. I will add a new thing over here. Random 123 and then whoever else is next in the chain, they will also get this new request object. उनका request object भी update हो गया. Their request object also got updated, and hence this random key that I set over here, I was able to get over here. That is how data is being passed from this middleware over to the next function in the call stack. How are you routing front end without writing? How can you writing in front end without manually writing routes? Few questions that seem completely unrelated and hard for me to understand only. Where is JWT secret stored? It's stored right here in the backend code, not in the front end code. Can we brute force JWT? Can I brute force your Facebook password? I can't, right? So how can you brute force this? If brute forcing was possible, it would be possible on a Facebook password as well, right? So no, you can't, unless it's a very simple bad JWT, 123, something like that. Cool. Let's get into the front end, folks. Happy to take questions at the end. But given that we have a sort of functioning backend, I have pushed the code. You can try to clone the same code locally, so you see the same thing as me. Let me now take you through the front end, and then 15% jitna bhi ho gaya, we'll do some Q&A at the end. Happy to answer, repeat, so on and so forth. Cool. All right. Writing the front end for it. Let's create a full stack application. We have written the backend. Thankfully, we don't have to touch the backend anymore. Next section is going to be, slightly more, jazzy, because we'll start from scratch, write HTML code, which is easy to write. So nothing too complicated here. Let's quickly create a front end that looks slightly ugly. It'll look something like this right now. It'll have, a username, password field, submit button for signing up, for signing in. If you are signed in, it'll show you your information over here. It'll have a logout button. Okay. Very simple front end we are creating. You can of course style it, make it more pretty, but the goal right now is to finish the whole thing. Cool. Until now, we've been able to use Postman to send all of our requests. How are we sending all the requests on this specific thing? We are using Postman to send it. How should we be sending it? Front end should be sending it. We are trying to create a full stack application. So let's write the front end that lets you sign up, sign in, get your information, your username, your password, things like these, and lets you log out. Let's start by creating a front end in the original code that I have already pushed. If you've written it yourself, great. If not, I have pushed the code over here, week 6.2. Let me paste this in chat again. You can clone this and run it on your side as well. Given this starter code, create a new directory over here called public, public, and here create a index.html file. No reason we have used the public folder. You can put it wherever you want. Let's say I'm doing it like this. You can also do it like this. Then what do? You add the standard things, HTML tag, head tag, title tag, auth website, and then body tag, something like this. Let me disable. And here I'll be writing all of my code. What are the things that I have to do? Again, I've written the step-by-step thingy. So if you want to follow along, you can follow along from there. Step 1, creating a public/index.html file. I've already done it. This is what my HTML file looks like. Has a body, has a head tag, has a title tag. What is step 2? Create a sign up section. What does our sign up section look like if you look at it? Has a text called sign up, has an input box, has a button. I can write all of it myself, or thankfully before the class I wrote it. So I can just copy paste it as well. What did I write? A div which has sign up text in the beginning. One input box whose type is text, name is username, placeholder is username. One input box whose type is text, name is password, placeholder is password. A button called submit, which when you click on it, it calls the sign up function. I haven't written the sign up function right now, which is why it is fine. At least visually we will see the final thing. If I open this index.html file right now, it looks something like this. Okay, sign up, username, password. Can you guess what is the next step? The next step is going to be creating the sign in section, which again, few input boxes and a button, nothing too complicated. Added the sign in section. If I refresh, I see the sign up section. I see the sign in section. This guy and this guy look very similar. Only difference is when you click on this button, the sign in function gets called. When you click on this button, the sign up function gets called. What is the next step in the series of steps? Create a user information section, which, right now looks something like this. Eventually we will see how you populate this section. But for now, create a simple section over here which says user information and has a div with ID equal to information. We will populate this div later. We are just keeping it over here as such for now. And lastly, create a logout button, a button that the user will click to eventually log out. That also calls a function. We haven't yet written the function. Hopefully this is straightforward. How to write basic HTML. That gives you a page that looks something like this. Tricky bit is writing the on-click handlers. What happens when you click on the sign up button? We need to send a request to the backend. What happens when you click the sign in button? Send a request. How do you do that? Step 1, adding the Axios external library. You can do this, you cannot do this. If you want, you can use the fetch syntax. We have already discussed this. We also have a video called Axios versus fetch. So feel free to pick, which one of the libraries you want to choose. I am going to use the fetch library. So I'm going to add a script tag here. And this script tag is bringing in an external library. What is this external library? Axios. Why is it used? It is used to send requests to a backend. Is there another way to do it? Yes, there is another library, or not a library, like an inbuilt function called fetch. You can use the inbuilt function, or you can use this library called Axios. We are going to use this Axios external library. What is Axios? Go to the video on our dashboard. We discuss what Axios is different from. How is it different from fetch? Write the sign up function. What did we say? Let me make all of these smaller. We have written a sign up section, and here we have a button. When you click on it, sign up gets called. So I need to create a function here called sign up. And what needs to happen over here? It needs to get, यहाँ पे क्या लिखा है? What is written over here? What is written over here? It needs to fetch both of these and then send a request to the backend. So what do I need to do? I need to give this an ID. ID equal to, let's say, sign up username. Okay, this specific input box key ID is sign up username. Then the next specific input box, which is this one right here, is key ID is password or whatever, sign up dash password. And lastly, the button is fine. What needs to happen in the sign up function? Sabse pehle you need to get what is written over here. Let's say Kirat is my username. So we need to fetch const username equal to document dot get element by ID sign up dash username, which is this ID right here, dot value. इसके अंदर क्या लिखा है? What is written inside this? Then we have the password. Okay, const password equal to document dot get element by ID sign up dash password. We have both of these values. What do we need to do next? We need to send a request to the backend. How can you send the request to the backend? You can either use the fetch syntax or the Axios library. What are we going to use? The Axios library. The way to send a post request using Axios is axios.post. Where do we have to send the request? Localhost :3000. Where is our backend hosted? Where was I sending Postman requests? I was sending it to localhost :3000 / what is the endpoint? The sign up endpoint. This is where I need to send the request. And what data do I need to send with it? The data that I need to send with it includes the username, which is this username thing over here, and then the password. Hopefully that's straightforward. We should await this. We should make this an async function. One extra thing I've done is made this an asynchronous function, and I have awaited this axios.post call. Why? Because this is sending a request to a backend server. It can take a lot of time. Might take 1 second, might take 10 seconds based on how free your backend server is. So this is an asynchronous function. If you hover over, this won't give you types, but this returns you a promise. And since it returns you a promise, you have to await it. You have to make sure that the backend request has succeeded. You got back some response, let's say, that you can inspect as well. Whatever response Postman may you get over here, I repeat, whatever response you get over here, message you are signed in, you can also get the same response over here. If you log response.data, we are not going to, so we don't need it. We don't need the output that the user gave us yet. In the sign in function, we will get the token. We will use the token to do something, but in the sign up endpoint, we don't worry about this. And we simply call alert, you are signed in. Let's just see, does this much work To recap, what did I do? I added the sign up HTML so that this line appears over here. I gave them IDs. I gave an ID to the first input box. I gave an ID to the second input box. On the sign up function, I said, first give me the value that is inside this. So Kirat gets stored in the username field. Then I said, give me the value in this second input box. So whatever my password is gets stored over here. Then I just send a backend request to the /signup endpoint with this username and this password. If this does succeed, I alert it. If this doesn't succeed, this will throw an error and the control will stop right here. So the alert will not get printed. So this is how we've written our sign up and function. Let's see if it works or not. We have to do one more thing to, we should host this front end on a slightly, easier to look at URL, something like maybe localhost :3000. If you remember, we discussed about CORS last week. What is cross origin resource sharing? To avoid all of that complexity, what I'm going to do in my code is, I have written the index.html on my backend itself. On my backend, amongst the many endpoints that I have, I'm going to introduce a new endpoint called the /endpoint, which means anytime the person comes to localhost :3000, I want to send them not JSON data. I want to send them a file. Which file? ./public/index.html. What am I doing over here? मैं HTML भी अपने backend से ही return कर रहा हूँ. In my backend code itself, if you visit the localhost :3000, this endpoint, I am returning the contents of my file over here so that my front end and back end are hosted on the same domain. Why am I doing that? To avoid some complexity that comes with CORS. Harshit, what is this complexity? We discussed last week. So now let me start the backend. And now if I go to localhost :3000, you will see I see the same front end. Okay, you have to do something extra over here. You cannot simply do res.send file this. You have to do res.send file __ dir name plus this. Can you guess what the __ dir name variable holds? It holds your current directory. __ dir name holds your current directory, what is my current directory right now? It is /users /Harkirat Singh /projects /cohort3 /week6/2. I can also paste this over here directly. I can do this. Or a better way to do it is __ dir name is a global variable by default which has the current directory. So I say current directory /public /index.html. ये जो file है ना, return that to the user whenever they hit the /endpoint. Now if I start it and go over here, you will see my front end is now hosted on localhost :3000. And if I hit the /me endpoint, that will return me JSON. If I hit the /endpoint, that is returning me HTML. Do we understand where we are at until now? We'll test this very soon, but before we test this, at least were we able to understand the sign up flow? How can you almost sign up? I mean, this is done already. We haven't just tested it. But can we do a poll? Meanwhile, let me also show this in action. Okay, 88% is great. So let me show this in action as well. If I inspect network tab, click on the submit button, can you see it says you are signed in? Can you see it sends a backend request to localhost :3000 /sign up? It is a post request that it sends. And what is the data that I send? I send the username and the password with it. What response do I get back? I get back, you are signed in from this endpoint. So sign up is straightforward. You guys already are very smart. You already understood it. Good to go. Sign in is a little complicated. Not too complicated, just a little. If I go to index.html, I have written the sign up function. That was simple. Let me write the sign in function. What is the sign in function supposed to do? The sign in function needs to, number one, we need to annotate this and this input box also. We need to put an ID here, put an ID here. So let me do that. The first sign in input box, this one right here, I'm going to give it an ID of sign in dash username. And the second one, I'm going to give an ID of sign in dash password. Okay. I have an ID for this guy. I have an ID for this guy. When you click on the sign in button, what needs to happen? We need to get the sign in dash username input box. This guy right here, the value inside this, and the other one, which is this one right here. Okay. We get the values over here. I need to send a request to the slash sign in endpoint. Hopefully that is simple as well. The new thing is I need to get the response of this sign in endpoint. This will have my token that the backend has returned me. So, I have to over here write, store the token somewhere. This is something we haven't yet discussed. The backend returns me the token. Abhi tak to we were using Postman. Postman was pretty simple. All you have to do is, one second. Postman mein, whenever I was hitting a endpoint, I was manually putting the token over here. I was manually hitting the slash sign in endpoint, getting back some data, the token, copying the token, going to the other one, pasting it over here. That is how I was doing it in Postman. But in the website, I need to store the token somewhere. Whenever the backend returns me some token, I need to store it somewhere. And the place we are going to store it is called local storage. Where am I going to store this website ka token? On this website's local storage. Every website that you go to, for example, if I go to app.100xdevs.com, this website has projects.100xdevs.com, let's say. Yahan pe I think we actually use, why is app down? We actually store something in the local storage. I could be wrong. But if you go to projects.100xdevs.com, go to the application tab over here, you will see a section called local storage. If you click on this, it tells you something. Next auth.message has this value. Theme is dark. So we store the current user's preferred theme in the local storage. Whenever I refresh this, I always see the dark theme. I don't see the light theme. But if I selected the light theme now and if I refresh, can you see the local storage theme variable became light? Let me make it dark again. Can you see it became dark? So if you want to store the user's preferences, let's say, oh wow. If you want to store the user's preferences around, in this case, dark mode hai ki light mode hai, you can store them in something called the local storage. Every website stores a few things over there. Why is app? For example, in this case, you saw the theme, but we can also store the token over there. So what do we want to do over here? We want to call local storage dot set item, give it a key, let's say token. And what is the value? Value is going to be response.data.token, something like this. So the same thing happens when you click on this button. When you click on this button, some code runs that does this local storage.set item theme, and then dark or light, something like this. So whenever we send a request to sign in, we want to store the token that the backend gave us somewhere, in this case the local storage. Why are we doing this? So that in every subsequent request, in every /me request that I'm sending, give me my password back, I can send this token along. I have logged into the website. I want to store the token somewhere in the browser so that in every subsequent request, I can send across this token. Let's see it in action. I've written the code, I've saved it. And this looks right. To recap, input box with this ID, input box with the other ID, a button that you click. When you click on the button, I get the username and the password from this input and this input. I send a backend request to the /sign in endpoint with the username and the password that I fetched from these two. And then I store it in the local storage. This is the only extra thing I'm doing. If I right now go to localhost 3000, click on application, click on local storage, you will see I have a few things. I don't have the token over here. I don't have a key called token over here and no value, corresponding value for it. But when I click on submit, Yeah, there you go. When I click on submit, it returned me message credentials incorrect. Why? Because I did not put any right credentials in here. Let me try that one more time. Let me first sign up. Raman, that is going to be my username and password. Sign up. It says you are currently, it should say signed up over here. It says signed in. That is fine. Then sign in using the same credentials. When I do, it gives me a 500 status code. 500 status code means the backend crashed. Let's see why the backend crashed. I'm sure you guys already figured it out. Secret or private key must have a value. Oh, when I was doing this, I made this empty by mistake when I was explaining something. Let me re-add the JWT secret back. Let's try that one more time. I've added back this JWT secret. I made this an empty string, which is why it failed. Let me sign up again. Click on this endpoint. It signed up correctly. Where did the request go? To the /signup endpoint. Click on the second one. Before I click on it, do I see anything in my local storage that's called token? I see token undefined because one of the requests that failed did not get back a token. I stored it here. Don't worry about why this comes. Let me delete it also for you. Let me delete this key from here. Now let me go to the network tab, sign in, click on submit. It says you are signed in. The request that went out returned me a proper token as well. And if I go to the application tab, I see this token I have stored over here. If I refresh this website 100 times now, this token still persists. That is why if you sign in once, your session remains until you log out. So until you log out, the token is stored over here. The only thing that is left now is whenever you send the third request, the next request, the user information request, you send this token along. But before that, do we understand the sign-in flow? This will remain the same until we reach, cookies and some special other ways to do authentication. So this part you need to understand well. This is how we will be doing authentication for some time now before we, reach a few other things and other ways to do authentication. Let's do a quick poll. Do we understand the sign-in endpoint that we have created? Let me trigger the poll myself. Oh, there you go. 85%. Not bad. Not good, not bad. Koi issue nahi hai. Let me finish the whole thing, then we'll do doubts. One last thing is left, which is, now the user is logged in. They should ideally not see these two buttons, right? Jab banda logged in hai, so they shouldn't see sign up and sign in. They should only see user information. They should see a logout button. So to kick things off, let's try to show them their information over here. How can we do that? Okay, when the user comes to the website, when the user refreshes, I need to send a backend request. I'm going to create another function here called get user information. Which is going to send a request to the backend. This time it's going to be a get request /me. It is going to send a request to this specific, URL route, whatever, with one extra thing. It is going to send a header along. And I think this is the way to do that in Axios. I could be wrong. So we'll see if the syntax is incorrect. What is the header that you have to send? In Postman, what was the header that we were sending? The header that we were sending was the token header with the token that while I signed in. I repeat, sending the token header with the token that I got while I signed in. So what do I need to do here? Token needs to be local storage.get the token field. Do you guys understand this part? Okay, I'm sending a backend request to the /me endpoint with these headers. Header that I'm sending is token. Where do I get the token from? From the local storage. Just how I can call local storage.set, which I did over here. Set item to set a key and a value. I can call local storage.get item to get a specific, in this case, the token. I have defined the function. I also need to call the function when the user comes to the website. As soon as the user comes to the website, I call this function and hopefully they get back their username and password. Let's see if that happens. If I go to the website and fresh now, notice the request goes out to the /me endpoint. And if I go over here, notice in the headers, I send token as this token that I found from where? From the local storage. That is how the backend identifies me. Backend gives me back the data, and then I can just shove this data over here. That's straightforward. There are many ways to do it on the UI. That really depends on how you want to do it on the UI. Let me do it fairly simply. Const response equal to this, and then response.data.username is what we need to, let's say shove over here. So document.get element by ID information dot inner HTML equal to username response.data.username password response.data.password. If I refresh, nothing happens. Because I did not await this. Response had the promise and not the actual value. So I had to await axios.get. I was not awaiting it. So the thing that was stored in response was not, our final object. It was a promise. Again, what is a promise? We've discussed already. Hopefully you already know by now. I await the promise, I get the response, I log it on the screen. If I refresh, I see username, Raman, password, Raman. That was my username and password. Let me re-log in as someone else. Raman2, password, I love Kiara. And then after I sign up, let me now re-log in. Raman2. Re-log in as this other person. You are signed in. Now, what happened? My token got replaced. If I go to local storage, this token now is for the new user, the Raman2 user. And if I refresh the page, I still see Raman. Maybe my sign in request did not succeed. Let me try that one more time. Raman2 and I love Kiara. Maybe the password is incorrect. Submit. It says you are signed in. Got back the token. If I refresh, we will debug, don't worry. I hope you understand what is the problem. I have written some code which is give me back my data as soon as I open the page. As soon as I open the page, we send a request on the /me endpoint. We send some headers along with it, specifically the token. Question is, if I am signing up or signing in, let's say I sign in as a third user, Raman3, password is Raman3. If I sign in as a third user, it says you are signed in. And then signed up, whatever. And then I sign in as the same user. I get back a JWT. Let's decode this JWT. Let's go to jwt.io and decode this JWT. It says username Raman still. So our backend has a bug. Our frontend doesn't have a bug. Our backend has a bug. Okay, even if I sign in as Raman3, if you look at it, the request that I'm sending is for username Raman3, password Raman3, but the response token that I got back, this token is for a different user. It is for the user Raman. It is like you sign in as your account, but you get signed in as Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook. So that is the bug in our backend right now. I'm sure it's very easily fixable if you go to index.js. What are we doing wrong over here in the /signin endpoint? Oh, I see it. But oh no, I don't see it actually. Never mind. Let's open Q&A. Let's see who knows the answer. There is a bug in the /signin endpoint. Can you find the bug? I see it now. I had hard-coded Raman over here. Why? I don't know. It should say users of I.username. Hopefully that's clear. Okay, you know what I was doing wrong. Probably did it in the middle. You get the idea. This should be the right thing. Let me also push this code so you guys can see from the same repository. Alrighty. Can we do a quick poll? Was this easy enough? Do you understand how do you connect frontend and backend? Iske baad there are a few assignments which I can do. You can do yourself. Great. We understand. Sort of. 86%. Not bad. Cool. I will do Q&A after this. Let me take you through a few assignments for this week. We'll also formalize this and put them on the assignments repository that we have. But the assignment is number one is conditionally render logout button. Oh, one thing I haven't done is logout, but hopefully that's fairly simple to understand. Okay, what do I have to do in the logout function? In the logout function, I simply have to clear the token from local storage. Dot remove item token. I will just forget that token. I will just remove that token from my this thing, so that in on subsequent requests, this comes down to null. So the backend does not identify you. So how have I implemented logout? By just removing the token key from the local storage. Cool. That is the logout functionality. Assignment is conditionally render logout, sign up, sign in pages based on if the user is already logged in. If I'm already logged in and I go to this page, then I should not see sign up and sign in buttons. I should only see the logout button and my information. If I am not logged in, then I should only see the sign up and the sign in sections. I shouldn't see these two sections. So can you try to implement this somewhere here? You have to do something in get user information. Yahan pe you will have to do something. You will probably have to read about try catches. So, read about them, try to figure this out. This is the first assignment. And the bigger assignment for this week is creating a to-do application, both front end and the back end. Right now, our application does nothing. It just returns you your username and password. Goal is to create a proper to-do application. Don't use a database. That is fine. That is something we'll discuss next week. But this week, try to use an in-memory database like we did and try to create one. All right. Cool. Let's open chat and try. Let me first look at Q&A and answer a few questions from there. Then eventually we can open chat. Class is officially done. This was all we had to learn today. Cool. Using my JWT secret, I get this, but if I decode using me, I get hello world. Someone uses JWT secret, he gets him. When I decode hello world, answer is the same, but the question is different. So basically, we are verifying tokens at okay. Someone has a very long question which looks interesting. So let me post it here so everyone can see. The question is this. The question says, using my JWT secret, I get this dot generate dot. This is generate by me, and if I decode this is generated by me, I get hello world. Correct. Someone else is using JWT secret. He gets this is generated by him. When I decode it by him, I get hello world. Correct. Answer is the same. That is correct. But the question is different. That is correct. So basically, when we verify, tokens are. different. So basically, let's do what you said. You said I am going to generate my own JWT. Okay. So let's go to our index.js file. Let me comment out or make these smaller. You have a great point. You have a valid point. Okay. Anyone can create a JWT. So जब मैं sign in कर रहा हूँ, when I sign in, when I sign in legitimately, let me sign in legitimately once. ठीक है. I go to Postman and I sign up legitimately, properly. कि हाँ sign up किया as the username Raman, password 123. ठीक है जी. Sign up. Then I sign in legitimately. And it gives me an error because I is not defined. What have I done here now? Oh, sorry. This should be found user dot username. All right. Let's try that one more time. I sign up with the right credentials. I sign in with the same credentials, I get the token. This is the legitimate token. Now you said, Harkira, there is an imposter. And that imposter generated a JWT themselves. How did they do it? They opened the node REPL like this. They did it. This imposter hacker is doing this on their own machine. They required JWT. Const JWT equal to require JWT. Or whatever, sorry, JSON web token. Then they did a JWT.sign and they signed the same payload, username Raman, using their own random password, hacker password. And this is the JWT that the hacker created. Notice the hacker does not know my JWT password. This is my JWT password. This is the hacker password. Different passwords, same payload, both are signing. Now if I use this payload and go to jwt.io, the hacker's payload gives me username Raman, and the legitimate payload, this legitimate payload also gives me username Raman. When I hit the /me endpoint with the legitimate payload, what do I get back? I get username Raman, password 123. When I hit it with the hacker payload, let's see what happens. This is the hacker payload. Let me copy it. It is decoding to the same data, but when I send this, very big error comes. Why? Because it says invalid signature. It says ये जो token है, it might decode to the same thing. It might give you the same data, but endpoint. But still, the auth endpoint. This line of code fails. jwt.verify, it says ये token इस secret से नहीं बना था. This token was not created using this secret. It was creating using the hacker password secret, this specific secret. So this line of code verification will not happen. Versus, of course, if I decoded it here, then it would have been a problem. Then a hacker could have created JWTs. But since I verified, even though a hacker can create a JWT with the same payload, it won't matter. Do all middleware functions have the next in their parameter? Yes. You can choose to ignore it. There is an argument here. तो मैंने use नहीं करना, you can do this. If you want to use it, you can do this. Whenever you add something here or here, whenever that thing is called, it will have a rec object, it will have a res object, it will have a next object. Why am I not able to understand how to use send file? What am I doing here? App.get. If you don't understand it, you can do this. Rec.send. Copy the whole HTML from index.html. Copy the whole thing. And over here, I'm using, this string syntax and paste the whole HTML here. If that feels overwhelming, I don't understand rec.send file, then just paste the HTML here. Hopefully that is easy to understand, more easier to digest. This isn't right. Neither of this is right. You don't serve HTML like this in the real world. You do something else. But if this dir name you don't understand, this you don't understand, just paste your HTML here. Same thing will happen. All right. I'm getting calls here even after adding this. You should not, after adding what you added. Most probably that is a proper backend error, or you might have done this. Check this. Is this HTTP local host 3000, or have you done HTTPS by mistake? So most probably your URL is incorrect. You are not sending a request here. You are sending a request here. Easiest thing you can do is send a select request here. Axios.get /me. Since the front end and the back end endpoints are the same, if you send a request to /me, it will go to localhost 3000 /me only. So response data is like rec.body. It is sort of like that. If the data that I send over here from here, that is the body that I am sending, that you get as rec.body. The response that I get back from the server, which in this case is a bunch of HTML, but if it was JSON, legitimate JSON data, then yes, I can get it in response.data. How is token stored in local storage? We didn't use local storage. How the token got stored in local storage? We didn't use local storage. Then what exactly did I do on this line of code? Local storage.set item this. If I take this code, if I go to any website of mine, let's say jwt.io, I open the console, I run local storage.set item, name Harkirat. And if I go to the local storage section, it will be hard to read this. Let me do it on a different website. projects.indexdevs.com. Open this. I do localhost.set item. Random key Harkirat. Something like this. Go to the application tab. Do I see random key Harkirat over here? Yes, I do. So this line of code does that, right? This stores it in the local storage. This fetches it from the local storage. How is response.username? Why is it not .data and not directly response.username? Great question. Great question. When we were using the fs library, when you did a fs.read file, it took a function. You remember it was something like this. Why was it not data, error? Why was it not an object big object जिसमें से you get data in error. Why was it error was first, data was next? Because that's how the library is written. जिसने भी Axios लिखा है, whoever has written the Axios library, they say यार तो आपको response object मिलेगा. Let's log, object. You can log the whole response object. And इसमें you can see कि it looks something like this. It has a data field which has the actual data. It has a status code field which has what status code got returned back. It has a headers field which has what headers got returned back. So on and so forth. अब whoever wrote Axios, they said कि यार मैं तो तुम्हें data इसी format में दूंगा, which is why it is response.data and not anything else. This one, how can the function access that? Yeah, so as I said, response is this complex object which has your headers, your status code, your data, everything that the server responded back with. This response has everything that you see. If you go to the network tab and see any request, this request returns you a lot of things. It returns you, the response headers. It returns you some status code, which in this case I got 304 status code. It returns you the actual response. All of these things, the status code, the headers, they all come in this response object. So status code, headers, data, everything comes here. I have to, you can clear the token reset. You're going to run, oh, that's old questions. So let's go to the newer questions. So anyone can store data in local storage, and this might be malware. No, not anyone can. Whoever, so when you go to a website, when you go to projects.100xdev.com, what code is running here? What JavaScript is running here? The developer, this name projects.100xdev.com likha hai, the person who wrote this, that person can run JavaScript over here, right? तो only that person can put data here. वो तो मैंने खोल के यहाँ डाल दिया तुम्हारे सामने. I just opened this and put random things here. That you can do. You can change any of your website's local storage data, but no one else can. If you want, you can do this. You should not do this either. But this on this website का local storage is present. On this website का local storage is present. Every website has its own local storage, and this website's local storage can only be changed by the developers of this website. Cannot be changed by anyone else. It's not like malware. Can I say this? JWT is basically a hash with a public key. So hash की definition क्या थी? Hashes are irreversible. This is not irreversible. This is fairly reversible. So it's not a hash. But ठीक है, I will go with it. JWT is a hash with a public key. Private keys with the server. You can say that it's sort of wrong वैसे technically in a lot of aspects. But चलो ठीक है. What I'm keen on is there should be some identifier, some part that is meant only for the signer, which is how they can testify the token is received for the. That is correct. Your understanding is correct. A few technicalities are wrong, but your understanding is perfect. If JWT is stored in the browser, then how does the social site knows that the username is already used because username is not stored in the database, right? Username is stored in the database. We are not storing it right now. Oh boy. We are storing the username here, right? Eventually next week we will store all of this data in a database. So we are storing all this user data in a database. Eventually, username is stored over there. You store it in the token as well. It is stored in the user's browser as well. It is also stored in the database. So you don't leave it from not storing you don't not store it in the database. You store it in the database as well. Looks pretty good. I'm sure it's great. I don't think I should review this. Let me answer a few questions, but it looks great. What is the IAT in the token? It is issued at. When was this specific token issued? That is what the field over here represents. I think it is encoded for no. It is it is a timestamp. So what is the current time? New date dot get time. The current time is this in some format. It's called the Unix timestamp. It is how many milliseconds have passed since 1st January 1970, I think. There is something called the Unix timestamp, which is how much time has passed since 1970. The current Unix timestamp is this. So the IAT field that you see over here is the Unix timestamp when this token was issued. Can I not brute force JWT pass to generate a lot of JWTs and try the... Yeah, the answer remains the same. Can I not brute force your Facebook password and find your Facebook password? I can, right? I cannot. There are too many possibilities here. So if you can brute force this password over here, Then you can brute force your Facebook password also, your Google password also. Then no one is secure, your other website's password also. If JFD is stored in the browser, then how do you answer that? What is the right approach for this? Axios is used for making HTTP requests, and why front-end, backend need to have same URL? They don't need to have. That is for something else. CORS. They can have different URLs. I can show you that as well. But we discussed that last week, if you remember. We discussed CORS. I wanted to avoid CORS today. You can totally have them on different ports. Axios can still send the request. For the same URL, we can use CORS. Yeah, for different URLs, you can use or enable CORS. For the same URL, you don't need to enable CORS, which is why we did that today. How should you do this? We already have a field in the schema where we are storing the most recent token of a user. So if you go to source slash, you go to Prisma, schema.prisma, you will see we have on the users database, we have a field called current token, something like that. It will be token. So similarly, this is the token that we generate for the user. The most recent sign in that the user did, uska token ye hai. Yahin pe you should store the IP. And where do we check this token? We check it in a top level middleware. So if you go to source slash middleware.ts, you will see here we check, is this token valid? So yahan pe we need to check, is this token valid and is the IP valid? So yahan pe we need to check the current request's IP and make sure your current request ki IP is the same as where this user logged in from. So there will be like one line of code change here, one line of code change in this backend URL, and one line of code change in the schema. We will do databases next week. Does this website have its own local host? Does every website has their own local host? This statement is incorrect. Local host is nothing but a domain name. Just like google.com is what? It is a domain name. 100xdevs.com is what? It is a domain name. If you ping 100xdevs.com, it tells you 100xdevs.com points to this server. If you ping app.100xdevs.com, it tells you, okay, it points to this server. If you ping google.com, it tells you it points to this server. Similarly, if you ping localhost, it points to your own address. 127.0.0.1 is what's called a loopback address, or your own machine's address. So localhost is nothing but similar to localhost.com as a man lo. It is just a website domain name. It is just a domain name. It under the hood points to your own machine, which is why if I go to localhost:3000, it is the same as me going to 127.0.0.1:3000, which is my own machine's address page. The thing that is running on port 3000 on my own machine. All right. What do we actually use in the industry for auth? Depends. This is also used in various places. There is something called cookies, which, very easy to, if you understand this, understanding cookies is very easy. That is the second thing that is used. And then, what is really used in the industry is a lot of, you verify the email via OTP. Let me just write this down. There are like a lot of, incrementally you would do this. Number one, you would do the JWT approach that we have. Slightly better would be you use cookies. Even better would be, or the bare minimum would be you actually send user OTP on email. You verify that the user actually has email. Fourth would be Auth. Okay, login with Google, login with Facebook. So and for doing Auth, there are a bunch of libraries, or you can do it yourself also if you understand how Auth works. But most of the times, most websites should use Auth. Login with Google, login with Facebook. So that is a whole different ballgame. How do you log in with Google? How are tokens stored in that case? So on and so forth. So to explore further, you should do this. One thing you should definitely do is cookies, and after that, you should figure out how is OAuth done. So go through this library called Passport.js. You can currently do this as well. You have enough knowledge now to be able to do authentication in Node.js using Google, Facebook. So this is one library that lets you do it. Try to figure this out. Firebase and Razorpay for my logging food with the help of ChatGPT. As I'm a beginner, before I take public, how do I reach out to you just so I'm not doing any grave mistakes? I might need a code review. Twitter, 100xdevs, ping Akash will get you to me, but The only thing you should keep in mind is when you're using Razorpay, use hooks, webhooks. Don't do it without webhooks. And let's talk. I would love to know people who have zero knowledge and use GPT. Let's look at your code and see how it, performs, and what are things you might have missed. Might make for a good video. So yeah, just ping 100x devs Twitter, and Akash will connect you to me. We're going to start with MongoDB next week. And where did it go? If I can access to someone else's JWT, then I can impersonate them any number of times, like Raman persisted even after. Correct, you can, which is why, tokens should have an expiry. Whenever you're issuing a JWT, it should get expired in like 2 days. So the user has to relog in. This is where refresh tokens come into the picture, where someone was asking what is, refresh token. So yeah. How to do course whitelisting. We discussed this. We should go through the classes, const course. There's a library called course that you can use. So const course, you will require course, and then you can do a app.use course. Something like this. And if you want to restrict certain domains, you can put, I forgot the exact keyword. I think it is domains. I could be wrong. So, you can do something like this. So the hacker can use IAT from your to generate the actual token, right? No. Hacker can use AWT. How? IAT is what? IAT is just something like this. Okay, when I am signing, I am adding a second field here called issued at. Okay, ये कब issue हुआ था? And I'm something like this. So how can adding another field, if I add the name over here? How will that help the hacker at all? This is not my secret. The hacker cannot see my secret. As long as this thing is safe, you are fine. As soon as this JWT secret becomes public, then you have a problem. If you just add a field which is, when was this token issued, that's fine. A lot of Notion docs. Hackathon results next week. Excited. Someone got a $3,500 grant from Super Team, one of the projects that was being built. So that's good. All right. Cool. Let's look at the Notion docs. I get error when I parse authorization header with capital A. That is, what error do you get? Log rec.headers. देखो कि rec.headers क्या है. वहाँ पे you will see, even if you are passing authorization with a capital A, what gets parsed over here is with a small a. So how would you debug this? How would I debug this? I would first do a console.log rec.headers. When you do that, you will see this third field is actually has a small a. So, whenever headers come, they get parsed down to, lowercase, which is why you just replace this with authentication with a small a, you'll be fine. But when I log in, pass with authorization, the small a, yes, exactly. So doesn't matter what you send from here. This is the standard, headers start with, are lowercase, which is why even if you send authorization with a capital A here, it gets, bonked down to lowercase, which is why wherever you're using it, you have to use it with lowercase. Cool. How to handle multiple user logins with JWT is stored in the local storage. How to handle multiple user logins? Oh, that is a good question. If I understand your question correctly, which is, you probably mean ke, if you go to a website, sometimes they allow you multiple logins, right? Ke, for example, if I go to Notion, it is showing me कि I have 100x devs account. There are a bunch of other accounts that I can access to. I don't have to relog in. So इसका भी token is present in my local storage. इसका भी token is present in my local storage. इसका भी token is present in my local storage. So I have multiple tokens. Question is, how can I have multiple accounts over here? The simplest solution is कि you can store the tokens like this. कि local storage dot set item token -1. Which is the first user's token, and then token -2, and whenever the user is in a certain user space, if I'm in this 100x devs account, this token gets picked. If I'm in this 100x devs Notion, Akash's Notion, then something else gets picked, so on and so forth. So don't use a single key, use a dynamic key. That's how you would implement this specific functionality. If this is what you were asking, I would assume this is what you were asking. Good question. Oh, sorry, this was Notion docs. So go back to Chrome. So that's done. More details of my problem statement. I'm trying to store the JWT logo. So if the user sign in, but what if I have multiple users try to access the same browser? How can I handle this situation? Yeah, so if multiple people are on the same browser, Facebook में ऐसा नहीं होता. If you go to facebook.com, one person logs out, only then the other person logs in. So over there, though, it's not a problem. But if you want to build something like Notion, where Notion has multiple users, then you can have multiple keys. Why does not account model store data in accounts instead of contracts? Does it improve performance? Maybe. It is just how they have. I mean, the biggest reason they do it is, very simple way to define कि अगर तुम्हें account, if you want to store data on the blockchain, which means you want to store some data on so many machines, there is a very clear metric here. This is the amount of rent you have to put. This is the amount of Solana you have to put. So their rent model is probably one of the reasons they went with this account models versus, how easy Ethereum makes it. They did 10 more things that we will be discussing very soon. When you are calling a function on a smart contract or a program, then, when you're sending an instruction, you have to pass all of the input accounts. That also they've done for, to make that as what these are the things that make this blockchain faster. Specifically for your question though, I think the data model that they have chosen gives them very clear definition of everything is an account. You can store whatever you want in it. You can store some data. You can store some programs. Whatever you store, proportionate to the amount of data you have stored, you will have to pay some rent, and that rent will stay there until the account is valid. Can we add a section of move in a while? Not right now. I mean, let's reach there when we reach there. Let's complete Solana, let's complete Ethereum, then happy to. And you won't be able to, you can sort of, but wait for Rust before moving to move. Move has very similar syntax, even though it's easier, but it probably makes sense for us to first complete Rust, then maybe to move. I can talk to a few folks at Sui though if they can take some sessions because I'm in touch, but I probably not in a while. Rust part 2. If this class wasn't so exhausting, I would have said tomorrow because everything is done. I just need to record it. But I think day after. So day after most probably. Next video on YouTube, 99% is going to be that. Okay. Public history using the domain standard. Oh, I remember you built this. I should productionize this. What did you do? What do I need to do? Connect the domain something? Again, connect with Akash on Twitter and then let's productionize this however it needs to be done. Oh wow. Yeah, this would be cool, man. Even though I still don't know how they would get automatically added to the cohort, but yeah, it looks pretty good. Cool. This is done. This is done. This is done. How open are people to paying small amount, either monthly per call, to ensure that they are speaking over a secure encrypted line? Not too many people. I have thought of a similar idea. I don't think this is a very big use case. People would trust, you build something today, people would still trust Telegram more than you. How much safe is the approach compared to end-to-end encryption on platform like this thing? How much safer is this approach? Which approach compared to end-to-end encryption on platform? End-to-end encryption is as safe as it gets, right? I mean, what extra are you doing on top? For calling, it's like a very common problem. In end-to-end encryption in WebRTC or end-to-end encryption in calling is like a fairly simple and solved problem. There are like very easy solutions. It's very easy to build, and I'm sure that's what Facebook uses as well, or WhatsApp uses as well. Approximately what percent of devices are behind symmetric NAT? Less than 5%. If you ever have a very big production, whatever Zoom-like website, you will notice less than 5% of the traffic gets routed via turn servers. So, if I had to guess, if you have unless you have a lot of university students, then it becomes more. And, usually this 5% is also, a lot of universities. Depends on your audience distribution, usually less than 5%. Can you put me some resources to build WebRTC thingy? What are you building? What are you building? Bruh, I have thought of this. I think I thought of exactly what you're doing here. I would not, do it. Great. This is exactly what I wanted to build in the past. And this is beautiful at the same time. This will not give you what you're looking for, which is encryption. You are doing complete negotiation on the blockchain. I get it. Same idea I've thought of. What does it give you though, doing it on the blockchain? You are literally putting out the user's IP, their SDP, over here. When you register peer, here you go. This SDP you're putting on chain. Number one, SDP is very big. So for every call, you will charge the user in a lot of SOL. Even though, after the call ends, they can just pull out the SOL. So it might not be a big thing. But what you're doing over here is exactly what I thought. I never built it. So do it. But don't do this. You probably don't need a contract here. What you need is simple signing. Create your own WebRTC, SFU, server, whatever. Don't go on chain. Just make users, sign messages, and that's how you. So what you should build is, what you're building here is not secure at all. Or if your goal is piracy call, stop piracy one-to-one communication. This is not doing that. This will do that, because what you're doing here is creating a WebRTC connection, which usually when it's between two peers, it's end-to-end encrypted. But you are publicly putting out, the HTTP of both the users, which is also fine. My point is, this is not solving anything that a Web2 system solves. You are just putting the same on chain. कि ये call हुई थी. This is more of proof of call. What you're building is proof of call. Okay, I had a call with Bill Gates, and it is on chain. Everyone can see Harkirat and Bill Gates had a call. This is that. This is not end-to-end encryption. You are not building a complete what I thought I would build, or what you might be thinking as well is, what if I want to talk to Vitalik and I want to be sure I am indeed talking to Vitalik? How can I do that? There is a website, and this will more be for hackers, hacker.com or whatever. The person who hacked the WazirX funds. Let's say you want to have a one-on-one conversation with them. They will not be open to that. They will not want to talk to you. But let's say you convince them, whatever. So you can talk to them. You need to make sure number one is end-to-end encrypted. You can't find the other person's location. Number two, that is indeed the hacker. So you need to make them sign a message using the address in which they have the funds. So उन्होंने जो पैसा चुराया है, the money that they have stolen, it is in an account. You need to make that account sign a message like initiate a call with Harkirat, and then you have a system where you are indeed talking to the other person, like proof of. You can prove that the person who holds the private key is the person with whom you are doing the call. That was the use case I thought of. This is a decent use case, but bro, it's like all of this. Literally every ICE candidate on chain as a transaction just sounds like it solves nothing, is what I feel. But crypto, you never know. People go crazy over dumb shit. So good though, very nice. I thought of something similar. I am front-end developer from IIT from Guwahati. Okay, कुछ मेरे projects मैं list down कर रहा हूँ. Oh, wow, you have a lot of projects. Let's see. Sir, we should talk. We should definitely talk. Wow. Fucking A. Joib. Alrighty. Yup. I followed you. Message me, let's talk. There's this company who's looking to hire front-end engineer. React expertise. I would hope. Wow, bro, this is pretty good. Like very fancy. Nice. I like it. Wow. Yeah. Pretty good. We need someone who has done some similar things in React Native as well. Like this, you're getting hired. But yeah, that's pretty good. Let's talk. Read more. Where to find? Wow, bruh. Pretty good. But I would assume, this is not the only thing you do. You understand React, general state management, things like these. And, you can code basic websites as well. Or, you can do other things that need to happen in a website as well. But yeah, if you've made these designs, then even better, that would be even more helpful. But yeah, pretty good. We should talk. Cool. We're out of Notion docs here. Where's chat? Anything else I can help with, guys? Any other questions? Few more Notion docs. Everyone over here should create a Notion doc like this. If you're willing to get hired, 20 such projects, each one better than the other one, is something bare minimum you need to get hired, or good to have. What will you prefer? Have front-end and back-end work in some instance on the same port? Have different instances of front-end and back-end? Have some instances of on one port, back on a different port? So Depends on what kind of website you have. Depends on your scale. To kick things off, today there is this concept of server-side rendering, where both front end and back end are literally the same process. So if you're doing that, that's literally the same process. These questions become irrelevant. If your stack is HTML, CSS is separate, and the front end is separate, and the back end is separate, then there are various ways. You've listed down all of them. No one is better than the other. Front end, back end on the same instance and the same port makes sense if you want to have your front end and back end on the same domain. For example, if you go to harkira.classics.co.in, the front end is hosted on harkira.classics.co.in. But if you inspect the request, you'll see the back end is on Harkira API.classics.co.in. So that tells you different servers they're using. For you, if you want both are on the same domain, then you can use the same literally the same process, like literally have different instances of front end and backend, maybe deploying front end on Vercel, backend on Azure. This is good in a few cases. For example, if you have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, then yes, you should not even have it on an instance. You should actually have it on what's called a CDN. It will save you a lot of costs, and this is the ideal way to host a front end. So ideally, your front end should be on a CDN, your backend should be on a VM or a virtual machine. So this is the ideal stack if you are using the front end that we have written until now, or if you're using React. If you're using React or the front end that we have written until now, which is HTML, CSS, JS files, then this is the stack. This is the ideal way. What am I doing? If your front end is written like this, then the backend should be hosted on a VM. Front end should be hosted on a CDN. But if you use Next.js server-side rendering, then it's a whole different ballgame. Can have the same instance but different port on front backend? I mean, 2 or 3 are both not very unoptimal. If you have a simple web, do whatever you want. If no one's using your website, but if you actually have real scale, if you have millions of users on your website, then what should you do? And the answer is this: CDN for the front end, VM for the backend. First of all, thank you for providing the structure of cohort. In just 2 months, I've gained full understanding of full stack. It's not been 2 months, but great. My question is, how can we send a token in a cookie or a JSON from the backend so that we have to save it in the local storage? I am currently sending the token HTTP only, but I am unable to save or read the token client side. If it's an HTTP token, HTTP only cookie, you will not be able to do it. Where is your code again? Sir, please can you explain the pre and post middlewares? Pre and post middlewares. I can guess what this means. Let me do that. One last thing, it's pretty difficult to understand theoretically. Please try to code it and then you say it's easy. आसान चीज नहीं देखी कभी. Pretty difficult to understand critically. So please try to code it and then you will say ऐसी आसान चीज नहीं. Okay, this is for other people. Advice. How did resource sharing happen between two applications work? How does resource sharing between two applications work? Backend talking to a backend? You mean something like this? This is a backend server and it talks to another backend server. There are various ways. If that is what you mean by resource sharing. Over here, what did you say? Between two applications. So, one of them can hit the HTTP endpoint on another. A server that is hosted on api.100xdevs.com can actually hit a server that's hosted on, api. Or whatever. Harkirat api.classics.co.in. Something like this. This can happen. But, there are other ways to do the same thing. We have a video. We will cover this in 1-200, but queues are one way for backends to talk to each other. There is something called gRPC that is very popularly done. There is something called pub/subs. There are various ways for backends to talk to each other, or resource sharing to happen with backends. I'm not sure if you meant backend, front end, something else. What is pre-flight mechanism in CORS? How is it different from a simple request? So there is this pre-flight mechanism in CORS is basically when you are sending a request from the browser to a backend, there is this request that goes out before the main request goes out. A lot of times when you're sending a request to api.100xdevs.com from, let's say a random website, or let's say whatever 100xdevs.com, the domains are different. This is cross origin request. In this cross origin request, there won't be one but two requests that go out. The first request is what is called a pre-flight request, and based on the response of this first request, the second request gets blocked or not. That is the pre-flight mechanism. In case of CORS, coming back to your questions, first of all, okay, my question is, how can we send a token in a cookie, but from the backend, but we can see the code below? Where is the code below? I don't see any code over here. Let me refresh. Can you paste the code, whatever code you're talking about? You cannot store a cookie that is HTTP only in local storage. So that's your answer. If it is an HTTP only cookie, the name itself says it is HTTP only. JavaScript will not be able to access it. Since JavaScript is not able to access it, you can't store it in local storage. It will just be going out in every HTTP request. Pre and post middlewares, I'm assuming you mean this, but I could be wrong. Okay, I don't know. Let's see. Pre and post middlewares. Can you point me to a doc by what you mean on this? This is the first time I'm hearing this term only. Pre and post middleware. Okay, I'm assuming you mean this. Probably. I could be wrong. Okay, you want to log. Let's say this logger middleware was there. You want to log something first. Then you want the request to happen. Then you want to log something after the request has ended. So maybe you mean this. I could be wrong. Okay, I want to run some code before the actual handler is called, and then I want to run some code after it. The most common use case of this is this. Okay, let start time equal to new date, and then the actual thing runs, and then let end time equal to this thing, and then you log कि कितना time लगा request में, total time taken by the request is end time minus start time. So maybe you mean this, maybe not. Okay, this is the pre middleware. Okay, before the request came, you ran this, and then after the request was done, you ran this code. That logged के request को कितना time लगा? How much time did it take for the request to happen? Is this what you mean? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Let me know. Refresh the page. Anything else here? Oh, there you go. Code, yeah. So you are creating, as you said, an HTTP only cookie. You are creating an HTTP only cookie. You cannot access it on the front end. You cannot store it in local storage. Please ignore the prevent request. One last thing, it's pretty difficult to understand. I think this request for other people, advice to other people. And over here, yes, on your backend, when you are creating the cookie, which is happening over here, when you do a rest.cookie token with the options, your options clearly say HTTP only true, which means you cannot, and if anyone wants to read through this, take a screenshot. This is how you do authentication using cookies. You call rest.cookie, which will actually set a header in the request, specifically the set cookie header, that will store this token in the cookie of the browser. And since it's an HTTP only cookie, that is what is written over here. That means this cookie cannot be accessed by JavaScript. It's only part of HTTP requests, and hence you can't store it in local storage, which is your original question. Alrighty. How local storage working? Can you explain? If we log out or change the account password, then re-log in, then does the JWT change or remain the same? If you change your password, JWT doesn't need to change. You can change it if you want. You can refresh the user. You can log the user out. If you log out, then you clear the JWT from the browser. And if you change the account password, a lot of times websites will log you out. Or if you want, the JWT can remain the exact same, and it will still work. Can we expire time in JWT? Yes. So when you're creating the JWT dot sign, you can pass in an option over here, which is the expiry. I think expires in. So you can pass in a third argument, expires in 1 hour. So this will expire in 1 hour, or 1 day. This will expire in 1 day. So or if you there you go, something like this. Any of these you can write. 7 days, 10 hours, 2 days. I don't know what 60 would be, probably 60 seconds. So, you can have an expiry over here. Uske baad the JWT will become invalid. Thanks for reading my web through notes. DM you. All right. क्या है ये? Oh, nice. Good for you, sir. All right, guys. Liquidity pool task. A few questions. Do we need to create liquidity pool for Solana? Yes. After you create a token on Solana, you can create a liquidity pool, and one of the assets can be Solana, if that's your question. Already create a token, then set liquidity pool for that token. You are sort of required to create a website where a user can come, create a token, and then add liquidity to that token. Can you please provide some extra context for the task? I mean, just if I could open WhatsApp. Someone did this today, and shared the code with me. So if I could just share that code with you, it would be nice. There you go. So try going here. Let me paste this in chat. This person has I haven't looked at his code. I looked at the website. He has apparently done it. So feel free to go here and look at it. Alrighty. Cool. And dummy JSON. I'm going through the Axios and course lecture. I have something that can help us create dummy JSON data for testing, and see there are options to create this thing as well. Cool. That looks pretty good. Did you create it? Very nice. It's called API G. Generate API create successfully, get data. It returns you some random data. Clear API clears it. I don't know what custom is, or you can create your own custom API, I would assume. Creating, get data, return something else. But yeah, this looks pretty good. Very cool. Cool guys, we will call it here. It was a long class again, 10:20, not too long. And let's meet next week when we are going to discuss databases in the other way, in the other this thing in web dev. And in web 3 we're going to learn about a lot of things on Solana, a lot of jargon on Solana, accounts model, not the accounts model, like ownership and the liquidity pool task, a bunch of other tasks. Last 2 weeks ki classes redone, things like these. So a few offline videos in web 3, a few assignments in web dev and databases. Please try to complete everything in web dev by next week, so that next week we can directly dive into databases. With that, we will end it. I will see you guys next week. I will have to call it here. Okay, I'll do one more round, then I'll call it. All right, share screen. Error correction, refresh page. I debug through the GPT and buffer. Don't use this. You can use this, but there is a better way to do this, which is what we've discussed. It is adding the node polyfill in Vite. So add that, and that should hopefully fix your error. Okay, adding this logic will most probably not fix it. You will still probably see an error. You should also have pasted the error over here, so I could have seen. But most probably now your typos are gone. So most probably, you don't use the buffer library like this. Instead, create a polyfill. If you're using Vite with React, then this should be straightforward. We've already done in the slides. Go through the slide, you'll find it. Some code that someone posted regarding my previous question. In question 2, I meant that I want to implement something like Facebook where only one user can log in once, like the Notion doc, multiple users can log in at once. So in that case, how can I through JWT and local storage? Something like Facebook, that one user can only log in at once, not like Notion. तो उसमें क्या है? Facebook, that is fairly simple. Someone comes, log in, you store it in the local storage, store the token. When they log out, if someone else uses this browser, they will see their friends with this thing over here. When they log out, then someone else can come and do the same thing. So that is very simple, right? How is it any different from what we built today? Okay, you can come, sign in, click on the login button. Their token gets stored in the local storage. Whenever they log out, re-log in, new token gets stored in the local storage. So that's fairly simple, right? So done. I did this already. You should go through. Where did you go after you posted your Notion doc? I have answered this one. You are reposting everything, but not my updates. Kahan hai bhai? No, there's no reason for it. Post it again. It happens very randomly. So, you should have put your tweets over here. I would have retweeted them right now. So put them here. I'll refresh the page. I'll retweet. Some websites want us to accept all cookies, irrespective of whether we are logged in or not. Yeah, those are different type of cookies. And that is what you're asking is what's used called GPDR compliance. Basically, in a few states, you are supposed to ask people to accept all cookies, which is what happens. And these are like cookies are used for various things, not just to log in. They're used to track people from if you ever go to one website and let's say a dog shop, and then you start to see a lot of ads for dog shops, that also happens by cookies. So cookies are used for a lot of things. Authentication is just one use case for them. It asks for cookies, yes or no. What is the purpose of this? Can it be fishy, yes or no? It's not fishy. It's more like the more cookies you have, the more you're being tracked, which is why Europe has this thing called GDPR compliance, which basically means that अगर आपका user आपकी website पे आ रहा है, if a user is coming to your website, they need to accept all cookies, only then can you track them. And if they don't accept all cookies, you can't track them. You can do less things. And cookies, authentication cookies के लिए you don't need any permissions, but other type of cookies that you're doing and putting on the website, that for that you need permission. that too not on every country, but some countries enforce this. Europe being one of them. There you have to show that pop-up that says allow all cookies. Oh boy, that's long. I'll come back to it. This one I already saw. IP implementation happened quick. Looks fine. This I will have to check. Most probably this looks fine. Looks fine. Why is this in so many places? That is right. That's right. I'm going to be an asshole here and ask you to put this logic in a common function, because there's nothing else wrong here. So one thing, it would be nice. I saw this logic is different. Here you're using reg.headers or reg.ip or this thing. And in the other place you were using, just reg.headers and this thing. Well, I guess there's probably a reason for it, because the rec object there and here are different, so that's fine. This is cool. If not json.user or user.ip. This is fine, but you should ideally have this logic in the same place. Like you should be sending an IP here as well. And wherever this check happens, you should be doing it. Don't have different set of checks. You should do that. If you are already here, let me write that down as well. In this endpoint itself, send the IP and do the check there. Do it separately. Below, or move all the logic for token check here as well. Don't have separate places for. I anyways never like this HTTP request that goes out from here. So maybe you can just get rid of the HTTP request, do the other check here as well. Alrighty, cool. Bahut lamba question. Hi again. Check this particular class of JWT. Oh, nice. What is this? The user object has a JWT that you saw in the response when you, exactly. There is a request. This is like, we don't send this request, next auth does, but there is a request that goes out to get your session. Here you can get your token. And what is this over here? Good. Very cool. And I hope you're not sharing it. Oh, I did share it. That is why it says Kirat. Oh, you got mine? Oh, well, I should log you out then. How did you get mine? That sounds problematic. How did you get my JWT? Did I share it or what? Let me open chat. How did you get my JWT again? I leaked it yesterday. Okay. Okay, cool. That's fine. The good thing is we have logic to, Oh, yeah, I just have to relog in and it'll just invalidate your. That's exactly what I was reviewing right now. Okay, If I relog in, your JWT will become invalid. So that's fine. Cool. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It's funny. Cool. Now coming to the long question from Abhay. I have a question. What is going on? Like a classes? It's because the front end was changed and then a lot of people did not like it, so I reverted. I'll do that this week. It's pretty hard. Yeah, exactly. So I'll fix that tomorrow. The issues with the new UI, but I think that's been fixed. It's the issues with the new UI. That's why I didn't do it. I think the fix for that is fixed. Someone added a toggle that lets you flip to the old UI. I've had a lazy for my machine. Neotr is taking the full columns. I have no idea. What do you mean full columns it is taking? It is not taking the full columns width. Oh. What is not? The sidebar or the main window over here? It's messing up the whole code formatting. I have no idea what might be causing this. And you'll have to spend some time debugging. No idea what's going wrong here. Unless I look at your machine, it'll be a little hard for me to debug this. All right, this is done. It's done. All right. Cool, guys. We'll call it here. Thank you for joining. I will see you guys next week. Have a good night. Sayonara.